It's time for the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer and Bruce Zeman.
Shoots! He scores!
And now, with a trip around the National Hockey League, here's Jim and Bruce.
Welcome back to the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey. I'm joined once again, a good colleague of mine, Jim Cerny. You can get him at Forever Blueshirts and Sportsnaut. Jim, welcome back to the program today.
Yeah, great to be here, Jim. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. It was a busy time of year. We saw each other back at the draft after a crazy playoff. A lot of things slowing down now into the offseason. The dog days are here. But I want to focus with you today, New York Rangers, mostly. Maybe we can touch on the division, but focus on the Rangers. And I want to start off with last season and the results. In your eyes, was it a successful season for the New York Rangers now that the dust has settled?
Yeah, that's funny. That's a dangerous question in Rangers land, right? It's hard not to say that there wasn't success, right? I know that the be-all, end-all is they got as far as they did in 2022, Game 6 of the conference final. That's still an impressive thing to do, especially after you flamed out in the first round against the Devils in 23, right? They were a better team. They were a more complete team. President's Trophy winners, franchise record for most wins and points in a season, and some pretty great moments in the postseason as well. So, yes, I think there was quite a bit of success that should give them confidence moving forward this season. Confidence in their coach, confidence in the players that they have. But yes, the underlying point here is they didn't get over the hump. That was a team, you had a feeling all season that they had the feel of a team of destiny. Maybe they didn't win a cup because, once you get that far, you just don't know. But they seemed good enough to be a Stanley Cup finalist all throughout the season. They faced their adversity in the regular season, which I thought was crucial. They had that January stretch where they weren't so good. Igor was struggling, and you're like, oh, no, bubble is bursting. But it didn't. They found their footing, and they finished that season so strong where I said, boy, that's going to be invaluable in the playoffs. They faced adversity. They nailed it. They came back stronger than before. You can carry that kind of experience into the playoffs. Well, it didn't quite work out that way because when they faced their most major challenge, they fell flat. Listen, the Florida Panthers dominated large swaths of that conference final, and the Rangers ended up falling short. So, yes, there was success to last season, but I think this season, going into the upcoming season, that same result won't cut it anymore. Like, they really need to be a Stanley Cup finalist at least, if not the Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you look at it, right? You take the success that you had. You did everything in the regular season. You said it, the adversity in the playoffs. Yeah, you faced the undermanned Washington team, a team probably that shouldn't have been there in the first round. But
it wasn't even competition.
No, but you handled your business how you're supposed to handle your business.
Correct.
4 straight. If it got to 5, okay, Washington maybe wins a game. Okay, but you took care of business. And then you started to see maybe some cracks a little bit because against Carolina, outside of the Kreider hat trick Game 6, you felt, oh, maybe if Carolina wins this game, you get to 7. Ooh, who knows what's going to happen here? And then Florida just decided, okay, yeah, we're the better team. And again, you can't, we look at Montreal in 93, 11 straight overtimes. Man, the Rangers had that feel, oh, they get to overtime, they're going to win every game. And then it just didn't work out that way. But again, I look at it from a side of, hey, you know what? You got to a conference final. You did well. You just ran into probably a better team. And, hey, now we got to build on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke to Chris Kreider last week. I saw him at that the Shoulder Check Showcase in Stamford, Connecticut. And he said the thing that stuck with him about the Florida Panthers was that they had complete buy-in, not only in the playoffs, but complete buy-in to that style that was going to win in the playoffs. They played it from day one through all 82 regular season and throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs. Everyone bought in. And sometimes losing first brings that complete buy-in. And I thought the Rangers had a really good buy-in last year under Peter Laviolette. Guys, they were embarrassed by what happened in that Devils series. Not that they didn't lose to a good team, but they were up 2-0 in that series. You win the first 2 games on the road. You have to win that series. They lose in 7, and to an unheralded goalie. And, it was a collapse on the Rangers side, no question. So they were humbled, and they came into camp, new coach, new message, a little bit different style of play, a little bit more defensive oriented, certainly in the neutral zone. And man, they bought in right from the get-go. And I thought they had that buy-in all the way through. But listening to Kreider last week, he said that was the big difference. That Florida team goes, there was complete buy-in, every player, every game, every shift, all season, all throughout the playoffs. And now the question is, well, can the Rangers have that same kind of commitment, going through this season as well as, you have to have some luck along the way. We know all the things that have to break your way to win a championship. But I found that really interesting that that's what he focused on. He didn't say Florida was the better team. They were more skilled. They were better here or there. No, it was the buy-in that he focused on. So, we'll see. That's an intangible, right? It's a hard thing for us on the outside to say, well, it looks like everybody's bought in. You're telling me they're not, or maybe not completely. So anyway, I find that to be an interesting thing going into this season. I always go back to this. Marc Messier told me this in 1994 when I was a young reporter standing in that locker room. He said, you have to lose before you win. He said, you name me somebody, some team that comes out of nowhere and just wins it all. Vegas was close their first year, but it just doesn't happen. You got to learn how to lose and learn from losing before you win. Now, the Rangers have had a couple of those close moments, and listen, they never got over the hump in the Henrik Lundqvist days either. And, they came close several times. San Jose Sharks came close several times, didn't get over the hump. You don't always win just because you lost. But that's a really good team. It's a really talented team. So I think that those losing lessons, Tampa in 22, last year to Florida, I think will serve them well moving forward.
Well, you mentioned it, right? Complete buy-in. And I go back to what Paul Maurice said during the Stanley Cup final. We ask these guys to do everything and they'll do it. And we don't tell them to do anything. They'll do it. Like, they just bought in, like you said. And look, I agree. I thought the Rangers played really well defensively. And I heard a lot of people say, and I was, walking around, oh, we're playing too defense. We got to open. I'm like, that's what wins in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
You got to still play defense as much as you have all these offensive weapons. Teams got to play defense. And let's see if the Rangers can do that again this year, because I still like Peter Laviolette as their head coach, and he's done a really good job.
Yeah. And you make a good point about the defense. And I think what comes hand in glove with that is the Rangers are so explosive offensively. They don't need a ton of chances to score, to put up points, to score goals. They can explode. So if you stick to playing a strong defensive game, you've got Igor as the safety net, and you just capitalize on your opportunities, you're going to win a lot of hockey games. And they did last season. They cashed in on their opportunities. You look at like their expected goals for and against percentages. A lot of them weren't so pretty. But what did they scored a heck of a lot of goals. They put up a lot of goals last season. They scored a lot because they cashed in on their opportunities. Now, I know, a lot of the argument against that is going to be, well, they were scoring on the power play, third best power play. They always rely on the power play. It's still a tool in your toolbox, right?
Yep.
The power play. Like I hear, oh, they're so reliant on power play and goaltending. And I get it. And I agree that they need to be better 5-on-5, converting 5-on-5, in particular, Mika Zibanejad. But that said, you don't dismiss scoring power play goals. Man, If you have that and you're consistently good in that area, that is a massive advantage that you carry with you, right? As is having a goaltender like Igor Shesterkin. It can't be the only tools in your toolbox.
No.
But if those are two of your important tools in your toolbox, I say you're ahead of 75, 80% of the teams in the National Hockey League right there. Then you got to take advantage of your opportunities, at even strength as well. Now, those opportunities really dried up against Florida because the Rangers were pinned in their own zone. They were defending all the time. They were back on their heels. They couldn't get into the transition game quickly. When they did get the puck out of the zone, a lot of time they were changing, because guys were exhausted from defending in their own end of the ice. So yeah, they need to be, that's a big part of the game they need to be better at come playoff time, is how do we get the puck out of our own end? Now, was it a bigger problem because Adam Fox was compromised and playing on the sore knee throughout the playoffs? And he's your best guy at that. But what's the excuse for Eric Gustafsson, who was good at clearing, getting the puck up and out of your zone? He struggled mightily. Andre Miller struggled mightily. Braden Schneider struggled mightily, So, I'm not going to just pin it on the Fox injury here. It's something their defense and the forwards, of course, have to help out as well. How do you get that puck? Puck's in your zone, team's coming at you hard on the forecheck. How do you get it up and out? 1-2 passes out, we're going the other way in transition. To me, that's the thing they need to figure out. Less so in the regular season, more so in the postseason.
Yeah, one more before we get to the big offseason news. You mentioned special teams, penalty kill. They did well, shorthanded goals as well. But a player I want to focus in on is Alexis Lafreniere. I thought he took a major step last year in his development with the New York Rangers, becoming that second line winger that everybody expected him to. Maybe he gets a chance at the top line, but he's been clicking with Panarin and Trocheck. I don't think you break that up. What are your thoughts on him, and what did you see in his development this year?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you saw is he was given an opportunity. Peter Laviolette started the season with him in the top six. Now, he had played some top 6 minutes before under Gerard Gallant, but certainly not consistently. Here, Laviolette said, here's where we're going to put you. It was that way from the preseason on, and he ran with the opportunity. Now, granted, he played with a guy that scored 120 points, a center that was an all-star, had a career-high 77 points. So you could argue that, Jim Biringer is going to score 20 goals just by throwing his body in front of the net and having Panarin's shot deflect off of him and into the net. I'm making light of the situation, but listen, he was given the opportunity. He took advantage of it. And then what I saw in the playoffs is what impressed me the most. Like, I was impressed with Lafreniere throughout the season, and he made me eat some of my words because I'd say, I'm not so sure about this guy. And, he's a good player. He's a good middle six guy, but is he going to be our top six guy? I'm not sure. I ate my words. He was a really good player, and it takes a good player to be able to play with special players. Not everybody can keep up with Artemi Panarin, right? Look at Zibanejad and Kreider, two terrific players. They can't find anybody to play on that right wing to fit in with them, right? So you have to be something special to be able to play with an Artemi Panarin and a Vincent Trocheck, who was real good on that line. But that said, it was in the playoffs. In that Florida series, who was their best forward? Probably Trocheck was their best forward throughout the entirety of the playoffs. Lafreniere was really good in that series. He imposed his will physically, scored some big goals for them. When everybody else's game went down, his rose up, or at least maintained the high level that he had in the first two rounds. To me, that was the growing up of Alexis Lafreniere. That's where I said, oh, this guy could be a 30-goal guy. And some of the goals he scored were beautiful, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
In that Panther series, the couple breakaway goals in that one game. So anyway, I know I'm going long-winded here on Alexis Lafreniere. I really expect him to take the next step here. And the Rangers need him to, right? Artemi Panarin's got another year on his contract after this one, so 2 more years to go. maybe he comes back, but at some point there's going to be a passing of the baton. And if you have the number 1 overall pick in the draft, you would expect that, it's going to go to him. And I think for the first few years, we didn't think that. Now I think you can envision that being, you know what? Lafreniere can be a 30 goal, 75, 80 plus point guy. And, listen, that's huge from what we were thinking before last season.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that, especially on Lafreniere. So Rangers, somewhat quiet offseason. They took care of a lot of housekeeping, some business, the latest with the Ryan Lindgren 1 year, $4.5 million contract. Obviously, they got Braden Schneider done as well. Obviously, we saw Jonathan Quick earlier, but I believe at the end of the year, right before the end of the season, they re-signed him. And they just, and they traded for Riley Smith as well to maybe fill in on the top spot with Zibanejad and Kreider. Your thoughts on the Lindgren deal?
Yeah, starting with that, I thought that was their most difficult contract, and obviously it was the last one that they ended up taking care of. I thought it was going to be their most difficult deal because there was so much to weigh here. He's an unrestricted, or can be an unrestricted, free agent at the end of this upcoming season. So, if you sign him to a 1-year deal, you could be walking him into UFA status. Now, they still, in the second half of the season, can sign him to an extension. But the issue is the other contracts. It is going to be a bear to put together that roster next season because Igor Shesterkin is due to become an unrestricted free agent. Lafreniere and K'Andre Miller are due to become restricted free agents with arbitration rights. They've kind of done their bridge deals and their, I know Miller's making a little bit more money, but, they've done their smaller contracts. Now they're getting closer to unrestricted free agency. Now they have arbitration rights. Now you're at the point where you say, yeah, these guys are part of our core. We've got to sign them. So I don't know. What does that mean? $7 million for one guy, 5.5, 6 for another. I don't know, 6.5 for one, 5 plus for another. It's going to cost. If those guys, and I believe they are part of the core, it's going to cost. Now Shesterkin, his agency's talking about getting 14% of the cap, which would be $12.9 million a year. So I don't know if it's going to be that, but you got to figure he's going to make more than Bobrovsky and Carey Price. He's going to end up being the highest paid goalie in league history. So that's more than 10.5. So let's say 11.5, maybe on the light side. Those are tough discussions and decisions, but that just eats into the cap. That means next year, let's say he makes 11, right? And again, that might be on the light side. Panarin's already making 11. Fox is making 9.5. Zibanejad's making 8.5. Kreider's 6.5. Lafreniere, what's he going to get?
7.
If they get a long-term deal. If it's only a couple-year deal, maybe it'll be less. But right, starts adding up. Oh, where does Ryan Lindgren now fit in? How do you pay Ryan Lindgren, who is probably looking at the moment? This is going to be his biggest payday in the NHL. Because, and this is the other part that you have to factor in with Lindgren. What's his shelf life in the NHL with the way he plays, the way he's always banged up, it's almost reckless play style and play through all these injuries and everything. You love it. You love to watch it. You have so much respect for this guy, right? How long can he keep this up? He's 26. You tell me, is that the body of a 26-year-old right now?
I don't think so. I think it's the body of a 40-year-old right now, the way the injuries he's had and everything. And the big thing for Lindgren for me is if you look at it, right, you say to yourself, okay, well, Lindgren plays well with Fox. He allows Fox to do everything. Can you replace that? Because we've seen it in other places. I'm looking at Ottawa with Carlson before he got traded. I'm looking, in Montreal before the Subban deal. You have that balance with a defensive defenseman and an offensive defenseman. That's hard to replace.
Yeah, no, I mean, no question. Now, not only would you have to replace him, but this if you're Chris Drury, this is what you have to weigh. So what would it cost to sign Ryan Lindgren to a longer term deal? Now, by longer term, I mean more than 1 year. What would it cost? Lindgren's looking for his biggest contract of his career. He's got to know that, let's say he's a free agent again at, I'm making it up, 31 or 32. How's his body going to age? He's got to know that his value now, it's 26, he'll be 27 when he's a free agent. It has to be higher than it's going to be 4 years down the road or whatever. So he's looking to hit the home run. Now, if you're jury, you're saying, well, we value him at this. We think we can get another, I'm making it up, 3-4 years out of him where it's not going to be crazy diminishing returns. Oh, let's say we don't sign him. That means we got to replace him. So maybe Keandre Miller moves up from second pairing to first pairing with Fox. I'd like to see that. But then you got to replace Miller on the second pair. You still got to pay somebody, right?
Yeah.
And to get a top four defenseman, of which they do not have in their system right now. There is nobody on the left side knocking on the door. What are you going to do? You're going to go out and get somebody. What are you going to pay him? 4.5, $5 million, let's say, on the open market. Oh, what do you pay Ryan Lindgren? Oh, 4.5. Here we go. So is it better to go get another guy, at that? And can you afford to do that after you pay Igor and Keandre and Lafreniere? So I know I'm not giving you answers here, but this is like what Chris Drury is looking at. That is a lot on the plate to figure out. So Lou Orlando, who writes for us at Forever Blueshirts, just posted a story this morning saying this is the best case scenario for the Rangers. Lindgren had a down year metric wise last year, right? His expected goals for were way down, even worse in the playoffs, worst of his career. So is he on the decline? Well, you look at some of the other numbers and you say he still had a good year and he was mostly healthy last year. But it gives the Rangers another year to look and evaluate and try and figure out what the heck that they can do. If they had a good young defenseman on the way, on the left side, sure, move Keandre Miller up. Maybe Zach Jones goes to a second pair. Probably not. To me, I think he tops out as a third pair guy. But maybe this new guy, whoever it is, moves into say they don't have him. He's not there. So you got to trade for somebody or sign somebody as a free agent, which goes to the endless cycle of now we got to pay somebody, right? And we got to give him term. So it's the same question you have with Lindgren that now you may have with somebody else. They are in a really tough spot because of the salary cap next season.
Oh, and let's not forget about the big elephant in the room with your captain that makes $8 million that we're still trying to figure out what we're doing with.
So Trouba will be with them this season. I do not think he'll be with them next season. Now, that will open up some cap space. Even if the Rangers have to retain half of that, it's still $4 million off the books, and the Rangers are going to be so close against the cap that every penny is going to count. But maybe they can get somebody to take on, the full $8 million, and they don't get much in return. So two things happen there. One, yes, you add, let's say, $4 million or $8 million to your cap. That's huge. That helps you with your Lindgren issue for sure. Now what do? We have a hole on the right side now. So it's not a perfect, scenario. No. EJ Emery is a right shot defenseman, their first round pick this year. He's a ways away. He's just starting college. He's 18. You talk to the Ranger people, they all tell you, we're not going to rush this kid. He needs time. He needs to grow into his body. He needs to mature. He's still a ways off. So you don't have that right shot defenseman.
Yeah.
So you got to replace Jacob Trouba.
You got to pay somebody again.
Right. But the difference now is maybe you're paying a guy to replace a third pair defenseman. And Ryan Lindgren then gets whatever Ryan Lindgren's going to get to stay as your Adam Fox partner. So maybe that's how all that, shakes out. Trouba. So your question is a good one with Trouba. I think he's here to stay this year. I think it's too late to trade him because how do you replace him?
Right.
But I think before next year, when his wife has finished her residency and he's in the last year of his contract anyway. I think it would be easier to move him.
Staying real quick before, because I have a question about Capo Caco and everything, but staying with Trouba, do you think, I mean, obviously Chris Drury didn't want to buy him out because the buyout is just ridiculous and it just hurts the cap anyway. Was there any point where they thought, maybe we could put him on waivers, or we maybe potentially could send him down, do like a bury his contract, like a Wade Redden type of thing?
So here's the story with that. They can still afford to pay him on the cap this year, right? Sure. If you had traded him, bring in maybe a younger, less expensive defenseman, play him on the third pair, maybe you would have had some more money then to upgrade the right wing spot. Maybe you don't trade for Riley Smith and, you set your sights higher. So, there would have been value to a Trouba trade. But for right now, they can afford him. He's their captain. That has value on the team, that has value within the dressing room. He's a well-liked, well-respected guy. He's a heart and soul guy. I get it. The eye test, the metric numbers, it's not pretty at times. He's still a top 6 defenseman on a good team in the NHL. For some teams, he's still a top 4 defenseman. But, if you're talking about, hey, we're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, he's a top 6 guy. It would be so difficult to put him on waivers or try and bury him in the minors. And plus, it would be counterproductive because there isn't anybody in the organization right now to take his place. As it is, you're moving Zach Jones up, to be on the left side of the third pairing. He takes Eric Gustafsson's spot. So you already have a kid that you're kind of breaking into the lineup. I don't think they want to do it with 2 guys. And, I don't think, I'm trying to think, throughout their minor league system. I mean, there just isn't a great choice. Ben Harper is probably their next best choice. Yeah. And, he's a 7th D guy and he plays the left side anyway. Chad Ruedel can play the left or right. He's a left shot, but he can play the right side.
But he's a 7th guy too. He's
a 7th guy. Right. So really it would be cutting off their nose to spite their face. And I know there are going to be Ranger fans saying, no, you get rid of him no matter what it takes, get him off. He stinks and all that. You have to take a breath and take some of the emotion out of this.
Yep.
And realize there are things that he does. He's a beast on your penalty kill.
Yeah.
Right. He and Ryan Lindgren are invaluable on their penalty kill, and their penalty kill is really good. And he's an important part of that. I get it. You have to shelter him a little bit more now at even strength. He still brings value on the ice. And of course the physical play, and Rangers don't have a lot of that.
No.
And Trouba brings it, and he brings it a lot. He brings it often, and he's a respected voice that has value. So anyway, I don't think that they ever considered the waiver wire or, trying to bury him below. It's like I said, cutting off your nose to spite your face. It didn't make sense.
Yeah, definitely the way you're saying. And, again, you take emotion out of it. You look at it. Hey, maybe he has a bounce back year. You never know. Guys are motivated. He could come in and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I heard all the press. They've heard everything. My name's been out there. Hey, I'm going to come back even stronger, and which you hope as a Ranger fan, and you hope as somebody watches the team. Another guy that you hope has a good year and maybe finally can put some things together is Capo Caco. He signs his qualifying offer, $2.4 million, and I guess it's now or never for him, right?
I think so. Now or never, at least here in New York.
Yeah,
he's still only 23.
Right.
He has a long runway left in his career to still, write his story. But I think here in New York, I think this is the make or break year. And to his credit, there was no messing around with his contract or anything like that. Rangers qualified him at 2.4. Shortly thereafter, he just signed for 2.4. He didn't say, oh, I'm going to fight for 2.7 or 2.8. Yeah. He knows he was a massive disappointment last year, right? And I get it. Part of it is he missed a quarter of the season, with the knee injury. So that factors in as well. This guy's betting on himself this year. And I think I think that he would welcome a change of scenery, I think he wants to prove it here too. He doesn't want to be a failure. He doesn't want to be the second overall pick, by the team in one of the biggest markets, in the NHL and fall on his face. Or fall on his face is an over exaggeration. Not reach the expectations, right? So I think he's going to be super motivated this year. It would help drastically if he could mesh with Zibanejad and Kreider, right?
Yeah.
Because then he'd get his top 6 opportunity like Lafreniere did. And, then the Rangers are set up nicely. Now they'd have to pay Kakko too. He's an RFA next year. But okay, if you know that, boy, we really believe in Lafreniere and Kakko, all right, let's pay him. They're our core. That's our future in the top 6 going forward. But he got his shot on that line last year and in previous years, he got some run with them. It's never worked. He can't explain it. He tried on breakup day to try and explain it. He can't explain it, but he admitted it didn't work. Well, unless they're taking Lafreniere off the Trocheck line and bouncing him up and maybe try Kakko with Panarin and Trocheck, the top 6 is kind of out of the question for him. So now, where is he again? Third line minutes. Play a good two-way game, which he does. Right? He's a responsible guy in the two-way game. Gets in on the forecheck, cycles. You can trust him defensively, turn the puck over, turn the other teams over in the neutral zone. You expect more from your number 2 overall pick. But as a third line guy at $2.4 million, you could do much worse, right? And
exactly.
He's got good chemistry with Filipino. That's not terrible, but he needs a top 6 opportunity. The Rangers need to know it. Maybe they think they know already what and who he is, but he needs to know. So I think you go into camp this year and he gets a chance again. I'd give him the chance ahead of Riley Smith. To me, Riley Smith is kind of your safety net. He's a veteran guy, been there, done that. You can trust him with the other 2 guys. I don't know that he'll spark the other 2 guys, but you can trust him. Give Kakko the opportunity again in the top 6 role. Start the season that way. Knowing you have Riley Smith there, kind of like you had Blake Wheeler last year, not a sexy option, but he can play there and he's been in that role before. But give Kakko that opportunity. I think they owe it to themselves to find out. And listen, if it goes like it did last year, at the beginning of last year, then he's back on the third line. You got your guy at $2.4 million and your wheels are turning. We got to flip this guy at the deadline or before his next contract at the end of next season, at the end of this upcoming season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you started off, try it in preseason, see if they can build stuff throughout camp, because I think that if they can get Kakko to start playing in the top 6, give him that opportunity. Again, was it designed for him to be drafted 2nd overall to be playing a third line 2-way game? Probably not. But like you said, he's become a responsible 2-way guy that just for some reason is just not getting puck luck when he plays with that top line.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's puck luck either. The guy needs to shoot more.
Yeah.
Right? He gets the puck on his stick. He wins puck battles. Shoot the puck. Get the puck on net. Generate opportunities for yourself and other people. I don't know that he has it in him consistently. We thought he was turning in a corner 2 years ago in 22-23. We thought, okay, hey, here we go. He's 22 at the time. Looks like it's coming together. Filipino, same thing. They both, had themselves pretty good years. And then Hedl gets hurt last year. Kakko gets hurt. And then when Kakko's healthy, even before he got hurt, he wasn't a factor. He just wasn't a factor. He needs to be a factor, but I think you need to give him that opportunity again, right? I know that it's going to be a battle for, throughout the year in the Metro, likely with the Devils, I think more so than any other team. Every game, every point's going to matter. But you know what? If it costs you some points or games at the beginning of the season because you're trying to see if this 23-year-old kid who you once believed was going to be a star, let's face it, they thought he'd be a star in this league. You work with him, you give him that opportunity. And if it works out, if it's a Lafreniere situation or even Lafreniere light, he doesn't have to score 28 goals. But even if it's just a success where he moves forward, where you say, yeah, he's a top 6 guy, then it's worth it. And if it fails, you know that you gave it every chance and you gave him every chance. And then drop him to the third line where he's a very good third line player for another season. And then I think you got to cut, I think you'd have to cut the cord at that point, both for the Rangers' point of view and for Kakko. Yeah,
absolutely. I totally agree. One more before I get you out of here, because I know it's a tight schedule today. Thoughts on the Metro Division, the improvements of certain teams, and where do you think the Rangers end up finishing in the division?
Yeah, so I know a lot of Ranger fans are, jumping off bridges and stuff like that because they didn't do a lot. They saw Jake Gensel's a free agent. Well, yeah, he actually never got to free agency.
Yeah, exactly.
But there were big, sexy names out there. Stamkos, even Patrick Kane, a reunion with Patrick Kane, or Vladimir Tarasenko, who I think showed in the playoffs that on a really good team is probably perfect third line fit and an emergency top 6 fit, right? He's not really a top line guy anymore. Anyway, I digress. But, there were all these names out there to consider in free agency. And boy, Rangers didn't have the room for them unless they had traded Trouba. So Ranger fans were disappointed. Nobody's excited about the Riley Smith trade, even though he might be a good player. Larry Brooks and I were talking about this when I saw him the other day, and he said, you know what, they're probably a couple years too late on acquiring Riley Smith. And it's kind of the way I feel about it too. But okay, that's what they did. The Pittsburgh ate part of the salary, fine. But the reason why there shouldn't be panic, and I don't say this that Chris Drury or Peter Laviolette, that they should feel arrogant about this, but I think you can feel confident in that you're returning the core of a very good team. I get it. Your lasting memory is they lost 3 straight to the Panthers, got eliminated from the playoffs. It seemed like their noses were pressed up against the glass by Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk and company, right? I get it. That's the lasting image. But you gotta pull back and say, you know what? This is a good team, top to bottom, right? They have a good top 6. Yes, I still believe they have a hole at right wing in the top 6. So they still have holes to fill here. And it's not perfect, but they're returning a really good roster this year that's still backstopped by Igor, that still has a perennial Norris Trophy candidate in Adam Fox. It still has Artemi Panarin in his prime. I would assume a super motivated Mika Zibanejad, who even in a terrible down year had 70 odd points last year, right? So I think that's good to start the season. I think that still contends for the top spot in the Metro Division. I think they're still the team to beat in the Metro Division. The key moment for them, assuming, they stay healthy and nothing crazy happens during the season, will be, what do they do ahead of the trade deadline? Do they go get a right wing, assuming Capo Kakko hasn't nailed down the spot or Riley Smith is on a 35 goal pace, which I don't expect? What do they do at the deadline? That is going to be much more important than what they did this past offseason in my book. Now, looking at the division as a whole, I see clear upper echelon. Rangers, Devils are the 2 best teams, I think, in the league, in the division. I'm sorry. What happened last year, the 31-point drop-off last year by the Devils, first of all, it caught everybody's attention in the organization. It was also everything that can go wrong went wrong year. Yeah. The injuries, key guys going down, and then, listen, it's partly management's fault too. They had to know that goaltending wasn't going to be good enough. Did they know it was going to be that terrible? Maybe not. But they had to know they had to upgrade in goal.
Yeah.
The defense wasn't good. They've upgraded that, I think, massively here in the offseason. Plus now Hughes and Nemec are also another, Luke Hughes, not Jack, are another year older. Markstrom and Allen, veteran goalie tandem, right? I'm not saying it's elite, but boy,
it's better.
It's better. It's better probably than league average. But even if it's league average, the Devils are going to contend for first place in the division. They have so much firepower. Now they need some luck too. They got to stay healthy. That killed them last year. But to me, it's going to be Rangers Devils for that top spot. I think Carolina has really come back to the pack. Brind'Amour is a great coach. He's going to have to be a great coach this year. They lost a lot last year. And I know people are saying, they signed Sean Walker, Shane Gostisbehere. They lost a lot in losing Brett Pesce and Brady Shea. That cannot be underestimated. So I think they come back to the pack. I think Philly's a team on the rise. I think Washington had a really good offseason, at least an intriguing offseason. They vastly improved their D. Now they have a 1-1A goalie tandem, adding Thompson with Lindgren. Dubois certainly is an X factor. We'll see. Patrick Laine, oh man, I think he'd fit, right? What did they miss last year? Goal scoring. Okay, they got Mangiapane and Dubois. Laine would be a little bit more of a sure thing to pump, pucks into the net. Anyway, it's my way of saying is you have the Rangers and Devils are here, right? They're one level. Then you get into the next level, which probably could include like 4 teams.
Yeah.
And then there's everybody else. And then the Blue Jackets are just at the bottom by themselves.
Right.
So an interesting team to watch this year is going to be the Islanders. Every year I say, they're finally not going to make it this year. And then they somehow find a way. I'm not sure I see it with them this year, you got Brock Nelson's going to be a UFA. And, I just wonder if they're teetering, does Lou do the smart thing and sell at the deadline? Right. We'll see. Anyway,
we'll see what Lou, you never know with him, and they've yet to address their need of goal scoring. And I don't think Anthony declares that option either. So
I think he helps. I think he helps, but yeah.
So they still need to score goals. And when it matters most, they just don't have the goal scoring to do it. They have a good team, but like you said, I agree with you. Devils, Rangers, top. Carolina's taking a step back. Philly's on the rise. Where Washington, where's Pittsburgh fit in, Islanders, there's a group of teams, and then Columbus at the bottom. It's going to be an interesting division this year and an interesting season. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the Full Press NHL podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure, Jim, anytime.
Absolute, guys. The Full Press NHL podcast, get it at Full Press Hockey on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Again, once again, Jim Cerny, Sportsnaut, Forever Blue Shirts. Guys, take care and enjoy the offseason.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.